is LBC News.
Now, we're spending a lot of time this week focusing on the Republican National Convention taking place in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Questions are being asked about the man we revealed last night has been announced as Donald Trump's running mate, the man who'll be vice president if Donald Trump is elected in November, J.D. Vance.
Talking about, what is the first truly Islamist country that will get a nuclear weapon? And we were like, maybe it's Iran. Maybe Pakistan already kind of counts. And then we sort of finally decided maybe it's actually the UK, since Labour just took over.
Now, those remarks have already been dismissed by the Deputy Prime Minister, Angela Rayner. Let's talk to Azhar Qayum, who's Chief Executive of the group Muslim Engagement and Development. Azhar, thank you for being with us on LBC News. Good evening.
Good evening to you.
What do you make of those comments by the man who in a few months could be the Vice President of the USA?
I think they're horrifying, and I think that it's just it's unacceptable that for political gain, people think it's acceptable to make Islamophobic comments like that, which essentially demean a whole community, and make it acceptable for others to say similar things as well when somebody so senior in politics is saying this. So, yeah, I think it's horrifying.
What point do you think he's trying to make? I mean, in what way could anyone possibly claim that Britain was an Islamic country or had become more of an Islamic country since the general election?
Well, clearly hasn't. So, I mean, there's huge factual error there. But secondly, the fact that, he uses the word Islamist, so not Islamic. But it is insinuating that anything to do with Islam or an increase of something to do with Islam is a problem in the first place, is an issue there. I mean, it isn't. Like I said, it's factually incorrect. But this idea that, you can do this dog whistle to your supporters and say basically that there's a problem with Islam and that we'll deal with it, that we're not like that we're not going to be accepting any Islam here, etc. And that's the issue. The factual inaccuracy is there for all to see because it's completely erroneous and completely incorrect anyway. But beyond that, it's the fact that, that he's happy to make that dog whistle and he believes that there's electoral gain to be had in this. And I think this is a huge issue that, and this happened here in the election as well, with some of the things that were said by Nigel Farage and others during the general election, that people believe that there's electoral gain in Islamophobia. And then they proceed to utilise that. And I think that's seriously problematic for our politics.
And there's something about the tone of the comments as well. I mean, in a way, they've used the tone to defend it, saying, oh, well, it was just light-hearted, all this stuff. But there's something about the sort of sniggering tone of the whole thing that's quite disturbing.
I mean, it is, and I think that this is the point that you can bring in a tone like this and then say, oh, it was just a joke, it wasn't that serious, etc. And it is quite Farage-esque, actually, the manner it was done, or sort of the way that Boris would say some of these things. I mean, if you remember the famous comments by Boris about Muslim women wearing veils as letterboxes and the like. Now, people may find that funny. People may find these type of things funny, but they're not. And they're beyond dog whistle. So, for example, after those comments by Boris Johnson, there was reports into the Islamophobia response unit of attacks on Muslim women who wear veils. So it's one thing. Oh, I made a bit of a joke. It was lighthearted. I may get some extra votes out of it. But what happens is real life consequences for Muslims on the streets of the United Kingdom and other places as well.
And you may have heard that both Boris Johnson and Liz Truss, two former Prime Ministers, are at the Republican National Convention. I'm not sure when they're meeting with J.D. Vance. Certainly Boris Johnson's met with Donald Trump because he's posted a picture of it in the past few minutes. Yeah.
And, Liz Truss, was at the National Conservative Convention last year as well. And we've had a lot of this thing where, people from the right of the Conservative Party have been meeting up with people within Trump's campaign and people quite far right within the Republican Party, so the likes of Bannon and others. And that is problematic that we're exporting some of this extreme right-wing activity from the United States, where it's being normalized there and it's being normalized here. And for the first time, we've got 5 Reform MPs that have been elected here in the United Kingdom. The Conservative Party is being dragged to the right both by the Reform Party, but also by voices within the Conservative Party who, frankly, like to be to the right of reform, I think. And Liz Truss is one of those. I mean, she lost her seat in the election, but it doesn't mean she's not going to be one of those voices that's pulling in that direction.
And let's just for a second, Azhar, reflect on the general election. Obviously, many Muslim voters would have voted for all parties available to them. But I think it's fair to say that a chunk of Muslim voters who might naturally have voted for Labour decided not to. We had a couple of independent candidates winning as a result of that movement. And it's been expressed in other constituencies as well, even where Labour did win. Just give me your take on that situation that we saw here a couple of weeks ago when Britain went to the polls.
Yeah, I think there's a long-standing disaffection, and not just over Gaza, between Muslim voters and ethnic minority voters to some extent generally, but Muslim voters in particular and the Labour Party. I think post-Ford report, with the suggestion of hierarchy of racism within the Labour Party, where things like Islamophobia aren't taken as seriously, or racism in general, as other forms of bigotry. So, for example, we all know, and I think it's good that the Labour Party takes anti-Semitism very, very seriously, and so it should. But, it
started to do so very recently. I mean, that you couldn't have said that a few years ago.
I mean, again, you can get into a discussion about that, but currently they definitely do, and they should do. 100% they should do. But do they take, anti-black racism or Islamophobia as seriously? And the Ford report, commissioned by the Labour Party itself, seems to suggest that they didn't. And the fact that, for example, on the eve of the election, someone like Faiza Shaheen, a Muslim woman, who'd given, her all to the Labour Party for many, many years, could be deselected. The fact that Diane Abbott was almost deselected on the eve of the election, all of those sort of things do, feed into a feeling that the Labour Party does not take, ethnic minorities in general and Muslims in particular seriously, or the issues that are dear to them. So the Muslim community in general, I mean, in constituencies with large portions of Muslims, the amount of voting fell. So less Muslims were voting in general in this general election, and those who did chose a lot of different places to vote for. So Muslims voted for independence, yes, but also the Green Party in much larger numbers than they ever have done. They voted for the Liberal Democrats in larger numbers than they have done for quite a while now, not since the sort of post-Iraq war period. There's a huge disaffection currently with both the Conservatives and the Labour Party from within the Muslim community. And I think it's really important the Labour Party needs to look into that, look into the issues. And rather than sort of blaming the community and extremism or whatever else they want to, actually look at it and say, what are the issues here? Where can we do better? Have real dialogue, real conversations within a community that's very heavily disaffected with the Labour Party at the moment.
Azhar, thank you. That's Azhar Qayum, who's the Chief Executive of the organisation Muslim Engagement and Development.